So yeah, my name's Chris Jones. I'm with Iowa Soybean. We're not an environmental group. We have an environmental group. So we are conventional agriculture. We're a checkoff organization and a member organization. We have about 10,000 members. We do have an environmental group that works with farmers to enhance environmental performance, improve profits, and implement policy. So I'll just say we're trying. Okay, we're conventional agriculture, but we're giving it a shot. So we work with a lot of partners to get work done in the state of Iowa. Of course, you can't get this environmental work done in an intensely farmed landscape unless you have partners. It's just too hard. So we have a number of them, and you can see them there. We base all our work on monitoring. Okay, we've really tried to not shy away from data. We've tried to support scientific solutions. I know in agriculture many times people, they don't like monitoring. They don't like what the data is going to say, but here again, we're giving it a shot. We're trying to support our work with credible monitoring. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about projects we've conducted with Fishers and Farmers. Fishers and Farmers is a group. We're on the steering committee along with a number of other agencies and NGOs. Fishers and Farmers is one of 19 fish habitat partnerships nationwide formed under the National Fish Habitat Action Plan. Our project area is the Upper Mississippi River Basin. We're a little unique amongst the 19 partnerships in that our projects are all on private lands. Our project areas you can see on the map here, 2 in Missouri, 2 in Iowa, 1 in Wisconsin, 2 in Minnesota. I'm going to talk here about this Boone River area here briefly. So to give you some background, the Boone River Watershed is in this Des Moines Lobe landform, okay, 150 miles west of here. 12,000 years ago, that's where the glacier was. Prior to European settlement, that was sort of a wetland Garden of Eden, okay? Now it's the corn soybean Garden of Eden. So to turn it into that corn and soybean mecca, if you will, we needed to drain it, okay? This was a huge project. Draining these lands in Iowa was a project bigger than constructing the Panama Canal. And you can see these guys would install the field tiles, which were made of clay back in the day, which is where the word comes from. Now it's the black plastic corrugated pipe. We use steam shovels. And of course, we turned this prairie pothole area of Iowa into a farmed landscape by lowering the water table. And I'm glad the lady talking about the Beavers went first before us, because of course, all the tiles don't look like this. This is a county tile line. There's field tiles that will enter a ditch like that as well that are, 6-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch. We have a video at work of a beaver rolling a pumpkin across a field and stuffing it up into a tile out. Yeah, maybe they have better, maybe their instincts aren't really that good. I don't know. But, so yeah, this is what it looks like, right? We all know this. And so the hydrology of the landscape has completely been changed. And this is intensely farmed, as I said, 80, 90% in corn and soybeans. Again, not a surprise. So our project in the Boone River Basin has been this Oxbow restoration. We have a number of these disconnected Oxbow formations from the main river and its tributaries. I think there's about 100 sites that have been located within this watershed, which I think is about 1,000 square miles. Our primary objective is to restore habitat for the Topeka shiner, which is Alicia's going to tell you about. But these things also have other qualities. There's a Topeka shiner habitat, the known habitat today, and the historical range. And this is the site of one of our projects. You can see these aerial photos going back to 1930. And so, of course, we completely changed the hydrology of the landscape, and these oxbows have been disconnected. Historically, they've provided great habitat for a multitude of species, but not only were they disconnected, but they also filled in with sediment during flood events. And so they basically perform no ecological function. By restoring these, we hope to restore some function on the landscape. These are good spots for projects because they're on private land, and they're generally not on land that is farmable. Okay, it's too wet. So a little cartoon of the project. We go in, we excavate the settlement from the identified area. It's designed to reconnect with the river every 2 years approximately. And then if there's Topeka shiners in the stream, they should colonize that Oxbow and take up shop, along with other species. So the other benefits that we get are nutrient processing. And so we know that this is a nutrient-rich environment, all sorts of problems related to municipal drinking water supply, Gulf of Mexico hypoxia, and so forth. So if we can introduce the water from a field tile into these oxbows, we can get benefits other than just habitat. So we all know that field tile has quite a lot of nitrate in it and some phosphorus as well. In the sediments of the Oxbow, the organic material will get denitrification, where the nitrate is converted to nitrogen gas and off gases to the atmosphere. We get assimilation by algae and macrophytes within the Oxbow. And then, of course, the animals and the insects and everything else in there become reservoirs for nitrogen and phosphorus as well. And so the Oxbow can function much like a wetland in terms of nutrient processing. And we hope the water seeping out to the receiving river then has a lower nitrate concentration. And thus far, this is one site. I just have one side of data here, but we can see we are getting quite a bit of processing. Now, it's hard to say what exactly that processing is due to. Is it denitrification? Is it assimilation? Is it dilution from the groundwater seeping in? But nonetheless, we do feel like these are good systems to address this high nitrate tile water. Here's the Boone River watershed. These black dots are locations of Oxbow restorations. I think we have about 10 now. And of course, this is an important stream. It's a tributary to the Des Moines River, which provides municipal drinking water supply to the city of Des Moines. We can see at the mouth last year, the average concentration is above the drinking water standard. Here on White Fox Creek, where some of our projects are, we have a concentration of about 15 milligrams per liter, about 1.5 times the drinking water limit. So this is a good target area for these projects. And this is just the drinking water treatment plant downstream in Des Moines with their nitrate removal facility. So this is before restoration, 2012, completely dried in the summer of 2012, or that was summer of 2011. It's excavated out, and you can see the pictures here. And in 2012, the drought year, that held water all summer long. Another site, and I'll let Alicia talk about the qualities that they design into these. So here's what we're after: good habitat, angling opportunities for people in Iowa, and habitat for birds and reptiles and everything else. So, Alicia?
Thanks, Chris. So yeah, my name's Alicia Kenny. I'm a private lands biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But I'm also a fisheries biologist. That's what I was trained in. So doing these Oxbow restorations with private landowners, and having a fisheries background with Topeka shiners is a perfect one for me. So I'm going to talk about Oxbows as fish habitat. This is a scene that we did this past summer. And you can see these Oxbows, the old channel scars, are the perfect size for these seines to go through. So when we sample for them, they're pretty efficient. And that's me. This was a 100-degree day, so I'm actually taking a break from that. So a little bit of history about how we got involved. So in 2002, the first Oxbow restorations in Iowa took place. And so we got $250,000 of recovery grant funding for the Topeka shiners. And at that point in time, we didn't know exactly what Topeka shiners liked for habitat. So So they used about $220,000 of that to do all this in-stream work. Giant plunge pools, made these big riffle structures, and then they had about $30,000 left. Like, hey, let's restore these 4 oxbows on the edge of it. Well, they went back and sampled, and they found 1 Dubuque shiner in stream using those riffles, and about 20 in these off-channel oxbows. So we found out they worked a lot better. Between 2002 and 2014, 55 oxbows were restored in the North Raccoon River watershed. And then starting in 2011, 11 were restored in the Boone River watershed. And that's some of what Chris's work is entailing, is that Boone River stuff. And so I apologize our server crashed, so that I don't have the Boone stuff, the Boone dots in, but we've restored 66 today. All these in the raccoon. The dark blue is designated critical habitat for the Dubuque shiner. It's just habitat that's got a little bit extra protection on it. And then the most of the blue ones are in this one and this creek, Eagle Creek and White Box. And so Dubuque shiners, they don't like fast-moving water. And during floods, them and other fish, they'll leave when that pulse of fast water hits, and they'll go out to the floodplain to get away from that fast-moving flow. Once the floodwaters recede, the shiners settle into those depressions in the landscape. In Iowa, these are most of those old oxbow scars, where they stay until the next flood allows them to return to the stream, or eventually the oxbow dries up and then they die. So here's the creek running. Here's an example of an unrestored oxbow. And so what's the problem? Well, back in pre-settlement, when Iowa discovered the prairie, these streams used to meander all the time. The bank full events happened more often than they do now. The floodplain was reconnected more often, and there's also these pools within the stream that Dubuque shiners like. Now, this is what we've done to our streams. We have these giant-sized banks. We've got giant ditches. The streams are no longer meandering, they're straight. And so this is an oxbow. This picture was taken in the end of May. And before this pool went down, I found 300 Dubuque shiners in this oxbow. And then this was 1 week later, and you get these little dried out fish signals all over the bottom. And so the solution's easy, restore the off-channel habitat. And so it's a really simple process. This is where the stream used to run. It's very obvious to pick up on aerial photos. All we do is when we survey, we take the elevation of what the stream is at now, and we do that, match that elevation on our restoration. But when you do it, you're going to hit mussel shells, you're going to hit cobble. You know that's the stream body, and the water, the groundwater immediately starts pooling in. And so this is a before restoration. The creek is back here, directly after restoration. And this one, Chris was saying that some of these designs we kind of play with. So this one we put in a vegetation shelf. So we left this a little bit higher ridge here, trying to get some vegetation growing to see if it would make better spawning habitat. A lot of these, we keep saying it's 90% art, 10% science, because you play with these things and you figure out what works best for the fish. And then present day, during the summer, this is what it would look like. This field's actually grazed too, so another thing, we don't disallow the farmers to graze it. We let them graze it, we give them standards, it can't be grazed too short, but we've done studies to show that the cows, the increased ammonia doesn't hurt the fish. And so some results we got, so we've collected 43 different types of fish in these oxbows, in the raccoon and the Boone River oxbows. One federally endangered species, that's the Dubuque shiner. That's just in the raccoon so far, but I'm very hopeful we'll find it in the Boone. 2 species of greatest conservation need in Iowa, the black-sided garter and long-nosed gar, which that's just amazing, the long-nosed garbs of these oxbows. And then 11 game fish, so this is how I sell it to my landowners. So we get large amount of bass, northern pike, catfish, crappies, some big crappies, 14-inch crappies out of some of these oxbows, which if you're a minnow, like that Dubuque shiner, not great, but for the landowner, they love them. And so what these oxbows are is like fishing nurseries. So when the floodwaters come out, the fish get in there, they spawn, they stay in there for a while. The fish that like to be in there, they'll reproduce and do well. The fish that don't, they'll die. And then once the next flood comes, all those reproduced fish go back out to the stream to repopulate. So we've collected up to 13,000 fish of 18 different species in one half-acre restored oxbow at one time. And so that's amazing. You think of the biomass in one of these things. In September of 2014, I found over 1,300 juvenile Dubuque shiners and 2 restored oxbows on the same property, and I about did a backflip. That is just absolutely amazing to find that many Dubuque shiners in one area. For example, in Missouri, where Dubuque shiners are doing really bad, they just did a reintroduction and they stocked 3,300 that they raised in their hatchery. Well, in 2 of my oxbows, I produced 1,300, so it's fascinating. On those same oxbows, we only found 19 adult speaker shiners, but this was late in the year, and 14 different species, along with those over 10,000 fish estimated per oxbow. There were so many speaker shiners, I didn't want to waste time counting all fish. And then a lot of people ask me, well, how do these things do over winter? And so we've documented they do survive over winter in these oxbows, because they're only about 5 to 6 foot deep. After 2 of the worst droughts in Iowa's history, they suffered one of the coldest winters on record, coldest snow-based winters on record. The oxbows were already really low, and it was cold, so the ice was thick. So I thought, here we go, they're toast. We sampled 11 oxbows directly after ice off. All of them showed these signs of winter kill. There was just dead fish littering the edges. 2 oxbows did have complete winter kills. We pulled the same through when we were pulling dead tadpoles, dead crayfish. They were gone. All the others did have survival of 2 to 8 species, so that's great. And then one contained 4 juvenile speaker shiners and a few fat minnows. So if they can survive on those conditions, then they'll live. But there's also multiple benefits to these oxbows. So, I'm not selling it to the landowner on this little minnow that's endangered. I'm selling it to the landowner on all these other things. So when you pull your seines through there or walk by, you hear frogs, you call all kinds of turtles, waterfowl. We've documented all kinds of ducks and birds and shorebirds using these things. The insect community is just great. Flood retention, so you get a little bit of flood retention when you treated those floods. Water quality, like Chris was talking about, where we're now starting to divert these tile lines into it. We funded a study out of Minnesota, Ira Edelman did a study to see what the effects were of nitrate and ammonia on speaker shiners and fathead minnows. And so he found that the low effect level for nicotinamide trouble was 253, I want to say, milligrams per liter. And the max we've gotten out of the tile is what, 60 maybe? So it's not even close. And then recreation. So I showed you there's 11 different game species in there, and so we can sell these to landowners by saying, hey, bring your kids out, go fishing. And it's working. So we're finding all kinds of people signing up for these. And this is a happy landowner right here, with the oxbow in the background. And this is actually 3rd generation. He did the restoration for his grandpa, and then this guy took over the land, and hopefully someday this guy will. And so, any questions from you guys? For Chris, we're at?
You mentioned different practices that you would allow a landowner to do. So does that say that you've got a conservation easement on this property?
Not necessarily easement. They do have to sign a 10-year agreement. Actually, with Oxbow, it's a 15-year agreement, just saying that they won't cause them to drain them or do anything that would harm them. But and it's a contract. It has things wrote down in it, but not necessarily an easement.
I was just wondering, in terms of long-term maintenance of these oxbows, I'm assuming they probably would fill in with sediment as time goes on. Do you have any way, since the stream's not meandering back and forth before new ones, how are you going to manage them, maintain them?
Right, so out of the 66 we've done, the first was in 2002, and we have stakes set. So I resurveyed them, and we've only gotten 6 inches of accumulation in 13 years, 12 years at that time. We've lost one oxbow to sedimentation, and that was one that was right near the big river, and that was probably a silly one to do just because of so much flow coming through there. But these are all buffered real well, so I don't see that being a problem.
Questions?
You're getting a good workout, Bob.
Have you had any interest doing these projects on the urban streams? Like an oxbow restoration in an urban environment?
If they're available, the towns that we're dealing with, I don't think we have too many where they go through anything. These are little, small farm towns. The streams usually don't go through, so I really haven't had a chance to work with them. We have done some on county properties, and those go really well. Those are some of our best sites, actually.
Chris, is the one in Fox Creek, is that available for viewing, or is that, obviously you'd have to ask the landowner's permission, but can we go ahead and see the results?
One of our landowners in the Boone River has been very cooperative about letting people come in. And I would say yes. In fact, we're trying to get a bird survey done this year, and we're going to use people from Iowa Audubon Society and the Iowa Ornithological Union to come in and do a bird survey for us. So yes, now you just can't walk down there on your own, but if groups want to see it, he's been very cooperative in allowing that.
We need music.
I was checking to see, do you have a general sense as to how far a Dubuque shiner will travel if it moves back to the main part of the stream?
That's a great question. I've been trying to get funding to find that out for a couple of years now. I do know they can travel from Oxbow to Oxbow. We've documented that, and it's probably been, 300 yards that it's moved, is the most I've seen. They're supposedly not supposed to move a ton, but sand shiners, they've documented moving 23 miles. So it's not unheard of. I just don't know. Okay. Try to find new funding, please.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you build any physical structure in the oxbows or do any special planting of aquatic vegetation?
We don't. So we try to keep these as cheap as possible, just to get the habitat that we need. The Dubuque shiners are also known to spawn on top of sunfish nests. So we try to hit gravel, and you do when you hit that old stream bottom. So that's the only thing we try to plant is try to find some sort of gravel there, and then those vegetation shelves trying to get more spawning habitat.
On the idea of nitrate remediation in this, in Iowa, we've had in our trout hatcheries that were spring fed in a condition called Popeye, where trout came and was attributed to high nitrate levels. So I'm kind of curious if we have field tile discharge, which is probably even higher nitrate concentration than the springs that this trout hatchery. What's the difference here? Are trout just an especially wimpy fish, or are there hatchery conditions that were contributing to the problem?
I think it's a multitude of things. So yes, trout are a wimpy fish. But also trout are also confined when those hatcheries are packed in. And so when we did our study, I already looked at Dr. Edelman, looked at all that stuff too, and what affects what colors, what levels. And so we're far below where we should hit any of those thresholds to cause or issues like that. We're sampling these things all the time, sometimes during the worst conditions where they're pea soup green and we're still pulling up fish, and we have not run anything top. So I don't think that'll be an issue with weeds, at least not right now, especially after the drought. I think we're listening to that and do what any time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.